Have you ever looked at a textbook and thought, okay, but how does this actually work in the real world? Well, today in this explainer, we're diving straight into a game changer, service learning and communication management. We're going to unpack how to stop just talking about making a difference and actually start doing it, effectively.
We're kicking things off with a pretty hard truth today. Ask yourself, is your volunteer work actually helping the community, or is it kind of just making you feel good? Because in communication management, good intentions literally aren't enough. It's way too easy to launch a project that makes us pat ourselves on the back while completely missing the mark on what the community actually needs. To figure out how to fix that disconnect, we're going to break this whole concept down into 4 pillars: service, learning, communication, and management. And then we'll bring them all together in a final synthesis.
All right, section 1 is service. We're shifting our mindset from charity to reciprocity.
Mahatma Gandhi famously said, "The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others." And you know, that really is our philosophical anchor here. Genuine service transforms not just the community, but you, the learner. To put that into practice, we look to management legend Peter Drucker. He asked the brilliant question, whom are we serving and what value are we creating for them? It forces us to completely flip our perspective. Instead of asking, hey, what project do we want to do? We have to ask, what does the community actually need?
So, here's the absolute crucial takeaway. Service is not a one-way street of charity. By definition, it's the intentional act of contributing your time, knowledge, and skills to address community needs meaningfully and reciprocally. We're not swooping in wearing capes to save the day. No way. We're working alongside a community, using our skills in a way that's entirely driven by what they say they need.
Which brings us right to section 2, learning. We are moving from passive memorization to actual praxis.
The brilliant educational theorist John Dewey really laid the groundwork for this. He said that education isn't preparation for life, education is life itself, right? Knowledge only truly clicks when we get our hands dirty in messy, real-world situations. I mean, you can't just study communication in a sterile classroom and expect to be a master at it. You've got to experience it out there in a real community, face actual problems, and then figure out why things went down the way they did.
David Kolb's experiential learning cycle maps this out perfectly as a continuous loop. Let's say you have a concrete experience, like launching a local health campaign for a neighborhood clinic. Then comes reflective observation, sitting down and asking, okay, what worked and what totally failed when no one showed up? Third is abstract conceptualization, which is just a fancy way of saying you connect that failure back to communication theory, maybe realizing you used the completely wrong messaging channels. And finally, active experimentation. You tweak your strategy and try again. This constant loop, that is how real, adaptable competence is built.
Now, to pull this off, we absolutely have to ditch what Paulo Freire called the banking model of education. That's the old idea where teachers just deposit facts into the brains of passive students. Instead, we need to embrace praxis, which is essentially reflection and action fueled by dialogue. When we walk into a community, we shouldn't be saying, hey, we're here to teach you. We need to be saying, we are here to listen, to dialogue, to act, to reflect, and then act again.
And that brings us to section 3, communication. This is the heartbeat of community engagement. We are transitioning from talking to people to talking with them.
We really have to leave the old-school linear transmission model in the past. You know, the one where you just fire off a message from a sender to a receiver and cross your fingers hoping for the best. Wilbur Schramm pushed us way beyond that, defining communication as a shared process that completely relies on shared fields of experience. A manager cannot just assume a message makes sense to the community just because it makes sense in the boardroom. The message literally has to fit inside the community's own reality, culture, and lived experience.
Doing this requires a massive paradigm shift. Following Freire's dialogical approach, communicating with people means the whole process has to be participatory, culturally sensitive, ethical, and entirely dialogical. We aren't just broadcasting at a passive audience anymore. The goal isn't just to make sure they hear us, it's to build genuine relationships that actually drive coordinated collective action.
All right, let's look at section 4, management. This is where we take all those great collaborative ideas and apply some structured coordination to create real impact. Henri Fayol's classical management functions give us the actual nuts and bolts of how to get this done. A communication manager has to systematically coordinate both people and resources. You start by identifying your objectives in the planning phase, then you organize your stakeholder networks, you lead the implementation, and finally you control or evaluate the outcomes.
And keep in mind, when we say resources here, we're not just talking about cold hard cash. We're talking about information, relationships, trust, and even the community's attention.
And here is where the rubber really meets the road. We have to apply Peter Drucker's ultimate check for effectiveness. Sure, you might have produced a stunning video, or organized this massive event, or printed hundreds of gorgeous posters. But so what? Did it actually solve the community's problem? This is the absolutely crucial difference between just doing communication activities and actually generating communication impact. Effectiveness means doing the right things, not just doing things right.
Okay, moving to Section 5, the final synthesis. We've deconstructed all the individual blocks, so now let's put it all together. Watch how this whole framework builds logically step by step. First, service. We serve a genuine need that the community actually identified. Second, learning. We take that real-world experience and transform it into rigorous knowledge. Third, communication. We use dialogue to build trust and create shared meaning. And finally, management. We systematically organize our knowledge, people, and resources toward a common goal. This score equation right here proves that we're dealing with something incredibly robust. This is not simply volunteering. It's not just a casual outreach program or your standard class project. It is the deliberate, rigorous integration of academic learning and meaningful community service, with reflection and reciprocity firmly baked into its core.
When we zoom in on the management side of things, we see it's entirely about strategy. It's a systematic process of researching, planning, and evaluating relationships to build trust and achieve mutually beneficial outcomes. It's really about making sure the work is sustainable and actually provides value to everyone involved.
And here is our ultimate synthesis. Service learning in communication management is an experiential approach. It ensures students learn how to manage communication by doing it for real people who are facing real problems. And crucially, they do this with the community, not just for them. By applying professional practices and critically reflecting on what happens, they generate both academic growth and tangible, meaningful impact.
If you take away just one single thing from this entire explainer, please let it be this. We learn by serving, we serve by communicating, we communicate through dialogue, and we manage communication toward meaningful social change. It's just a beautifully interconnected system.
So, as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on. As you go out there and engage with the communities around you, ask yourself, are you just checking boxes and managing isolated projects, or are you truly managing communication toward meaningful social change? The answer to that question changes absolutely everything.